The plan had taken 3 weeks to put together. Yero was proud of that. 3 weeks of observation, schedule mapping, access code acquisition, and careful coordination across 4 different crew members, all to arrange a single, clean, unambiguous message to the human that had been quietly making his life difficult since the Ardent Meridian left Vora Station 7 months ago. The message was, "You are not as safe as you think you are." Cargo Bay 9 was perfect for it. Sealed bulkheads, no internal comm relay, atmosphere recyclers that ran on a separate loop so you couldn't trigger an environmental alarm from inside. The bay was used for overflow storage of non-perishable colony supplies, crates of agricultural equipment, sealed polymer sheeting, the kind of cargo nobody checked on for weeks. If you sealed a person inside Cargo Bay 9, they were sealed. No rescue coming. No signal out. Just them and the crates and the slow psychological understanding that nobody knew where they were. Yero had trapped people in worse places. It was, in his experience, clarifying. He gave it 6 hours before the humans started making noise. John Okafor had been on page 340 when the bay door sealed behind him. He heard the magnetic locks engage, 4 of them, sequential, the particular thunk-thunk-thunk-thunk of a manual override rather than the standard single-lock automated close, and he understood immediately what had happened. He also understood who had arranged it, approximately why, and roughly what the intended psychological effect was. He turned to page 341. The book was a battered paperback he'd bought at a second-hand stall on Kepler Station, a mid-century thriller set entirely on Earth, the kind where everyone drove automobiles and used payphones, and the tension came from people not being able to reach each other instantly. He found old Earth fiction restful. Things had been so small then. Dangers you could outrun with a car. Problems that resolved in 300 pages. He settled himself more comfortably against a crate of polymer sheeting, which was an excellent backrest, and kept reading. The internal camera in Cargo Bay 9 was patched to Yero's personal comm. At the 1-hour mark, he checked it. The human was reading. At the 2-hour mark, he checked again. Still reading. He had, at some point, taken off his jacket, folded it, and placed it behind his head as an additional cushion. At the 3-hour mark, Yero called in Desik, his second in this arrangement, a sharp-faced Polasian who had contributed the access codes and who now looked at the camera feed with an expression of deep uncertainty. "He's been reading for 3 hours, Desik said. "I can see that. Is he? Does he not understand the situation?" "He understood the situation," Yero said. He heard the locks. Desik stared at the feed. On the small screen, the human turned a page. "Then why?" "I don't know." Yero's mandibles pressed together in a way that, among his species, indicated extreme discomfort. "Check the atmospheric readings." Desik checked. "Normal. Recyclers running fine. Temperature is," he paused. He adjusted the temperature. "What?" "There's a manual climate node on the interior wall. Standard for cargo bays, in case of temperature-sensitive loads." He found it and turned the temperature up by 3 degrees. Desik looked up. He made it warmer in there. Yero was quiet for a long moment. "How?" he said finally. "Does a person who has been locked in a sealed cargo bay with no comm access and no rescue incoming make themselves more comfortable?" Desik had no answer for this. Emma got the message at the 4-hour mark. It came through the ship's general channel, crew welfare ping, routed from the Ardent Meridian's automated systems, which John had apparently triggered through the climate node's diagnostic interface. Not an SOS, not an alarm, just a quiet welfare check notification, the kind that got generated when a crew member's biosign reader registered their location as a non-habitation zone for more than 2 hours. The message read, "Crew member John Okafor. Location, Cargo Bay 9. Duration, 4 hours 12 minutes. Automated welfare check initiated." Emma read it once. Then she pulled on her boots, picked up her own book. She was mid-chapter and wasn't about to lose her place, and went to find the Cargo Bay override panel. It took her 11 minutes. The magnetic locks required a maintenance key, which she got from the engineering locker using her consultant access, because nobody had thought to revoke that. She cycled the override. The locks disengaged in reverse sequence. Thunk, 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 and the bay door slid open. John was on page 412. He looked up. "Hey," he said. "Hey," Emma said. She leaned against the door frame. "Good book. Getting good. There's a subplot involving a corrupt harbor master that I didn't see coming." He folded the corner of his page. She would tease him about that later. He had been warned repeatedly about dog-earing, and stood, stretching. His back popped in two places. Yarrow. Almost certainly. The access codes were Desik's work. Yarrow doesn't have the clearance for that bay. Emma nodded. She'd assumed as much. You okay? I adjusted the temperature. It was a little cold initially. He picked up his jacket, shook it out, put it on. The polymer sheeting crates are a good height for a backrest. Better than the crew lounge chairs, honestly. Emma looked at him. John looked back. You were in a sealed cargo bay for 4 hours, she said. I was reading in a sealed cargo bay for 4 hours, he said. There's a difference. I would have been annoyed if I'd been close to the end, but I was at a natural stopping point around page 340, and the lighting in there is actually better than my cabin. Emma pinched the bridge of her nose. This was, she had long since accepted, simply what John was. She had known him for going on 4 years, and she had watched him respond to a great many things with a level of baseline unruffledness that she sometimes found maddening and always found quietly astonishing. She had watched him sit through a Cal 3 trade dispute that had reduced 3 trained negotiators to visible distress, and contribute, at the end, a single observation delivered in the same tone you'd used to mention it was raining outside. She had watched him endure a 6-day transit delay on Vora Station by learning to play a Drinathy card game from a dock worker he'd struck up a conversation with, and arrive at their destination having made what appeared to be a genuine friend. She had watched him, once, talk a man out of a fight by asking him a question about his home planet's ocean currents with such sincere curiosity that the man had simply forgotten to stay angry. It wasn't a technique. That was the thing about John. He didn't have techniques. He had a relationship with the universe that seemed to involve the fundamental assumption that things were, broadly, manageable, and that if they weren't manageable right now, they would be eventually. And in the meantime, there was no reason not to be comfortable. It drove people who wanted to frighten him absolutely insane. They found Yarrow in the crew mess at 2000 hours. John sat down across from him with a cup of coffee and his book. Emma sat beside John, opened her own book, and said nothing. Yarrow stared at them. John turned a page. You were in Cargo Bay 9 for 4 hours, Yarrow said finally. 4 hours and 12 minutes, John said, without looking up. The welfare ping triggered at 4 hours, but Emma took a few minutes to get the maintenance key. 11 minutes, Emma confirmed, still reading. Yarrow's compound eyes, he was Drinathy, and had 6 of them, moved between the two humans in a way that indicated profound recalibration. He had expected fear, anger, demands, confrontation, leverage. He was prepared for all of those things. He had spent 3 weeks preparing for those things. You're not, he started. Not what? John turned another page. Not, you're not going to. Report you to Captain Vesh? John looked up then, calm and direct. I haven't decided yet. It depends. On what? John considered this. He set his book face down on the table, still dog-earing. Emma noted, she really did need to get him a bookmark, and gave Yarrow his full attention. It depends, John said, on whether we can have a straightforward conversation about what's actually bothering you. Because I've been on this ship for 7 months, and I know Yarrow arranges an elaborate 4-person cargo bay lockdown doesn't happen because someone just feels like it. Something is wrong, and you've been dealing with it sideways for weeks, and today was apparently the day it came to a head. He picked up his coffee. So, what's actually going on? Yarrow stared at him. Across the mess hall, a ventilation unit hummed. Somewhere deeper in the ship, the engine cycled through its standard evening calibration sequence. The Karanath contract, Yarrow said finally. Reluctantly, like a word he hadn't planned to say. My family has interests in the Karanath contract. If your work with the cultural liaison continues, the arrangement that's been in place for 8 years, it destabilizes. It cost us significantly to build that arrangement. And he stopped. You've been cheerfully disassembling it for 7 months without appearing to notice it exists. John nodded slowly. That's the thing you should have said, he said, about 6 months ago. Yarrow looked at him. I'm not an enemy, John said. I'm a xenobiological consultant. If your family's arrangement has legitimate standing, there are ways to document that and have it considered. If it doesn't, he paused, then it was going to destabilize eventually regardless, and locking me in a cargo bay wasn't going to stop that. He picked up his book again. But I'd rather find the first scenario than the second. Tell me about the arrangement. A long silence. You, Yarrow said, are the strangest human I've ever encountered. I've been told, John said pleasantly. Emma turned a page. He dog-ears books, she offered. That's the actually alarming part. Later, walking back to their cabin corridor, Emma fell into step beside John. The welfare ping, she said. You planned that. The climate node's diagnostic interface routes through the ship's crew welfare system if you enter the right query sequence, John said. It's in the maintenance manual. Chapter 9. You read the maintenance manual. I was bored on the Vora station delay. Desic had the card game. I had the manual. Emma was quiet for a moment. Around them, the ship's corridors hummed with the low vibration of deep transit, the sound she'd learned to find as familiar as breathing. So you were never actually stuck, she said. I was stuck, John said. I just wasn't worried about it. He held the corridor door for her. There's a difference. Emma walked through. She thought, not for the first time and certainly not for the last, that humans were the only species in the explored galaxy that could be locked in a cargo bay by enemies and come out of it having read 70 pages and identified a path to conflict resolution. She also thought that she really needed to get John a bookmark. Some things, after all, were genuinely alarming.